Hello viewers, and welcome to episode 22 of F1 Talk, and in this edition I'll be going over some more news with you as well as my preview for this weekend's Canadian Grand Prix. So I've got some news in front of me, so I'm just going to go over the recent news in F1 and obviously my preview for the Grand Prix this weekend. So we'll kick it off with Michael Schumacher. Two bits of news about him, or two bits of talking points as far as I can see. Ross Brawn says he wants Michael to stay on for as long as he's competitive. The mere fact that he scored the pole position in terms of time in the last Grand Prix, does that mean he's finding his edge again? Is he slowly but surely becoming the driver that we know he can be? Obviously the Mercedes is becoming more competitive by the race because of the fact that, you know, it's a learning curve for him. The last time he drove competitively, you know, the cars were a heck of a lot different. We still had groove tyres when he last drove a Grand Prix and won a Grand Prix. He's yet to be on the podium since returning from F1. However, saying that, this year he's been involved in several mishaps, so to speak. A definite contender for this year's Hamilton of the Year award because of the fact that he's had these collisions with other drivers. You know, he's quite clearly known for being one of the greatest of all time, but he's also, to me at the moment, has he lost it up here or something? And that's a question I put out to you people that are watching this, because of the fact that he always seems to be quick this season, but he scored 2 points, I think, throughout the whole season. He's finished one race, and more often than not getting overshadowed by Nico Rosberg. So, you know, it's a question that I've asked, and I just wonder what you people think. Speaking of you know, composure and things like that, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. It's about McLaren. Are they all bark and no action? Are they all talk and no action? Let me give you an example. You've had numerous champions at McLaren: Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, Niki Lauda, James Hunt. They all won the championship with McLaren. Obviously in more recent years you've got Hakkinen and Lewis Hamilton in 2008. But answer me this question, will you, please? Are they the same team they were in 2008? No, they're not. And I think the biggest thing that McLaren have had to do, really, to soften the blow of 2009 in Australia with the Hamilton and Trulli incident, where he passed him under yellow flags with the safety car because Trulli went wide. Ron Dennis left after that Grand Prix. Alright, he was beginning to take a back step anyway, but McLaren, the team, Vodafone McLaren Mercedes, or McLaren in general, in terms of Formula One, have not been the same since Ron Dennis left. I beg you to put a few comments in the comment box or whatever to argue against that point. McLaren are not the same team since Ron Dennis left Formula One operation. They are less successful, even though Jenson Button last year finished runner-up in the championship, Sebastian Vettel. You've got to take into consideration the mere fact that there's been more mistakes for McLaren as a team, as a whole. I'm talking about pit stop mistakes. You know, Ron Dennis wouldn't have had any of that. Not that McLaren these days will accept you know, mistakes in the pit and things like that. But the thing is, they're not as tight a unit as they have been in the past, and that is where things are going wrong for McLaren. They are not the team that, you know, they've got one of the more competitive cars this year. They've won one race. Jenson Button hasn't scored a decent amount of points in 2 races now, 2 consecutive races now, and he's just not getting anything. He's not getting a single thing with regards to, you know, this is a car capable of winning races and championships. They've won one race between 2 of the best drivers on the grid. I don't know what's going on with them, so nor do they. Narain Karthikeyan, I'm going to put him up for one of the more dubious honours in Formula 1. Is he the worst driver in Formula 1 history? And I'm asking a lot of rhetorical questions. I mean, obviously, any comments in the comment box are completely welcome as far as I'm concerned for all of my videos that I do. But Karthikeyan, is he the worst driver in the history of Formula 1? He's consistently slow, and he's consistently at least a second and a half slower than his teammate when he's been at any team. Is there any surprise that Narain Karthikeyan has been replaced at any stage in his career? Not if you ask me, there isn't. Big news, and I should have started with this, but I'm doing it in the order that I found the news and reading it out. The rear of the Red Bull, or the floor of the Red Bull, has been declared illegal by the FIA. After the win at Monaco, there were a lot of protests from the other top ranking teams. We're talking Ferrari, Mercedes, Lotus, McLaren, over the legality of the hole that appears in the underside / rear of the Red Bull. I'll give you a little link in the description of the video as to what I'm talking about. It's far more technical than, you know, just a fan watching Formula 1 can give you. Apparently you're not allowed any hole to give you better airflow through a specific piece of aerodynamics. Red Bull had a hole for the last 2 races, including their big win at Monaco last time out. No indication at the moment, at least, as to who, or as should I say, as to what happens to the points gained by Red Bull at Monaco. I presume the points will stand. Maybe even the constructors' points might get taken away. You know, breach of the rules, but that was declared illegal on the 2nd of June. And so Red Bull will be coming to Canada this weekend with a revised car. Will that make a difference in performance? We don't know. Canada, few twists and turns, but there are a couple of really long straights which will probably suit the Red Bull anyway. But they are being basically told like that at the moment. I think a more stern approach is needed, and it's not just to stop Red Bull winning the next race, but I think a grid penalty for both cars, or a constructors penalty for this year. They're not allowed to win the constructors championship, a little bit like McLaren in 2007 perhaps. I don't know. We'll see what happens. More news as it comes. And going back to Jenson Button, is he out of the hunt for the championship already? We've got Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, with Mark Webber closely behind the Ferrari of Alonso in the championship. But Jenson Button failed to score points in the last 2 races. Is he out of contention? This year, will it be Jenson playing second fiddle to Lewis in terms of championships? You know, there's still a long way to go this season. There's still 14 rounds of the championship still to come, or should be still 14 rounds of the championship. But if you take into consideration that the amount of retirements that the other 4 contenders for the championship will probably have in those 14 rounds, probably makes a big difference in terms of what Button's going to be able to achieve this year. Jenson Button needs a win again in Canada this weekend. You know, he obviously likes the track, but he did have lots of luck winning that race last year. In my opinion, alright, it's not quite time to write him off, but he's got to get a podium at the very least this weekend. The cliff of the Pirelli tyres. Now, there was some fantastic tyre management by Sebastian Vettel at Monaco, which basically means that the Red Bull's aerodynamics was rather suited to the Monaco track. It's just the fact that as soon as this cliff is hit by any driver, you're 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap slower because your tyres are not working as well. Tyres. You know, you hear messages go out to drivers like Lewis Hamilton who just love to race, and all the messages is, we need to look after these tyres or whatever. You hear that over the radio, and as a driver, that must be the worst thing to come over the radio. You're doing fairly competitive lap times, and you get a message like, you must look after your tyres, you must look after your tyres. And it's like, I don't want to look after my tyres. Tyres are... And, you know, you see lots of drivers at Monaco did 1 stop. Now, I'm all for making the sport better, and Pirelli have made the sport better. They've made it more exciting to watch with regards of, you know, what they've had to do, what they've been asked to do by the teams just before they came back into Formula 1 at the end of 2009. They've created tyres that don't last Grand Prix. And, you know, with regards to the tyre degradation at Canada, because since 2007 at least, we've seen marbles collect up at the final hairpin before the long straight, just as we get into sector 3, intermediate 3, and there's always marbles there. There were horrible marbles at Monaco, to be honest with you, within 12-15 laps. So we'll see how bad the tyre degradation is going to be at Montreal this weekend. Hopefully, and this is one of my big hopes for the race, hopefully we will see the return of passing. Monaco is a spectacular occasion. It deserves its place in the Formula 1 calendar, basically because it is Formula 1 more than any other track. But we hardly got any passing. Hopefully passing will return this weekend, and we'll see some decent passing as well. There's a brilliantly long straight, which I hope is mostly DRS. I remember there was a double DRS zone in terms of that long straight. It didn't obviously work for this final chicane, and then there was a bit more of a DRS zone with regards to the next section of the course. But speaking of the DRS, why didn't it work at Monaco? I think the answer is fairly simple. Even an uneducated person like me in terms of Formula 1 can answer that question for you. The DRS failed at Monaco because your gear ratios at Monaco are set up for acceleration. You are very, very rarely running at top speed at Monaco, you know, so top speed isn't important at Monaco, acceleration is. And the majority of cars, specifically the Lotus, the McLaren, the Mercedes, possibly the Ferrari and the Red Bull, specifically were designed at the start of the race weekend for high acceleration. And by the time the car behind you obviously had the DRS open, the car in front of you was halfway down the straight. And that's the problem with Monaco. It's all to do with acceleration. And another piece of news floating about is that the silly season, the driver's silly season, has begun early this year. Lewis Hamilton is pondering his particular future. Now, his future depends a heck of a lot with current drivers being out of contract. There are 3 drivers, 3 different teams, as well as Hamilton himself, that are out of contract at the end of this season. They are Mark Webber of Red Bull, Felipe Massa of Ferrari, and Michael Schumacher of Mercedes. Now, it's very true that Hamilton will not want to spend any more time as a partner to Fernando Alonso, couldn't say that right then, with regards to what happened in 2007. So that move is probably out of the question. To have 2 top drivers in the same team would boost Red Bull sales, and they've certainly got the money to bring Lewis on board. Will they want the combustible elements of 2 top championship contenders being teammates? And who would be 1, who would be 2? Because Vettel's still in contract with Red Bull. He's sort of penciled in with Ferrari for 2014, I think it is. There are 2 other options open to Hamilton. The first is to obviously stay with McLaren and just weather the storm. But as I said earlier, McLaren are not the team they were in 2008. And the other option is the seat at Mercedes. He is a good friend of Nico Rosberg, so that partnership would work. And the Mercedes is proven already by Rosberg this year that it is a race-winning car. You add Lewis Hamilton to that mix and Hamilton will deliver. So it's all about, does Mercedes want to offer? It's not just Mercedes, it's does every team listed there want to employ Hamilton? It's all a question of what Hamilton wants. Well, does he want a competitive car? Does he want to remain loyal to McLaren? If so, that could be the deciding factor. So we'll see what happens. You know, we're going to start to see a little bit more in terms of driver markets and things, but it all depends on the 3 drivers, Webber, Massa and Schumacher, carrying on to where Lewis is going to stay with McLaren, or where he's going to go away from McLaren. So I thank you very much for watching this edition of F1 Talk. By the way, just quickly before I go, with regards to the race, I think, here's my predictions. It's going to be difficult, but I will say, I'll say Mark Webber again for pole and the race this time around. He would have gained huge amounts of confidence with that win at Monaco. The Canadian track at Montreal, Gilles Villeneuve, is very similar. Red Bull's very good at its tyre management, and we'll just see what happens this weekend. Will we get rain? Who knows? But we will probably have a safety car. So I thank you for watching, as you do each and every time, and I'll see you early next week for the review and run of the Canadian Grand Prix.